Hi everyone, I'm Matt and welcome back to Toylytics, where we take a look at the analytical side of toy collecting. Well, the calendar's just turned to April 2024, so that means that it's time to start looking at the data on the secondary market sales for Mythic Legions and related lines over the first quarter of 2024 because all the data is now available. So I'm really excited to take a look at these sales because we've had a lot of changes in the Mythic Legions market over the past 3 months. Specifically, the biggest development was the release of the Poxus Wave, which we were all looking forward to. So we'll be definitely able to see the effects of that release in the sales, as well as we just recently, over the past month or so, had the Reinforcements 2 wave become more available in the latest in-stock sale. So that means that a lot of those figures prices are definitely going to be changing over the last part of Q1 as well as moving into Q2 based off of what was now available when it was only available before with respect to that one single day back in late 2023 when you had to buy an all-in for those figures. So be interesting to take a look at those too. Before we actually get into the sort of overview of the secondary market, I wanted to provide some background on the data in case anybody's new here, where this data comes from and what the data is and what the data isn't as well that we're going to be talking about. So the background of the data collection, all of these sales come from eBay because that's the easiest place for me to be able to collect data. And I started collecting on June 28, 2023, and I've continued up through the end of March. Okay. Only complete single figure sales. There's way too much variability with respect to lots, with respect to individual pieces, that sort of thing. Now, it does include loose figures as well as mint and box figures, but they have to be complete, right? Because there's just way too much variability. If this is missing a sword, this is missing a shield, this is missing the soft goods, there's just way too much variability there to be able to assess what the real price is. So it's only complete figures, only sold individually. All the faction information comes from Source Horseman, so if you have a problem with the faction that I put for certain figures in, go to Source Horseman because that's where it comes from. And as I said, both loose and new figures are included in the data. Okay, so additional characteristics, sales for figures released in All-Stars or Reinforcements waves are not distinct from sales of original releases, because a lot of times the sellers on eBay, they don't know whether they have a Malleus, for example, from Mythic Legions 1.0 or from All Stars 3. Sometimes they say, but sometimes they don't even know. So all of that is together because, again, those figures are just a re-release. It's not an update. Now, of course, when you see like a Vorgus Vermilius 2, that is a definitely different listing from the original Vorgus Vermilius because it's an updated figure, right? It's not a re-release. So those are definitely distinct, but any sort of All-Stars release of the exact same figure is going to be lumped together, right? Because it's too hard to determine. Okay? Sales for figures released in convention exclusive packaging are distinct, though, from sales of main releases because that's easy to determine when you look at a listing as far as whether it's the normal release or it's a Legions Con or Zolo Con or Power Con release, for example. Okay? And that's it for the intro, right? So now let's start taking a look at the data overall. So again, the other videos that are going to be coming in the next couple weeks are going to look at each wave, wave by wave, and the sales and the prices and all that for the figures in those waves. So we're going to dig deep into those in the subsequent videos. For right now, though, we're just looking at Mythic Legions overall to get a general sense of what's been going on in 2024 compared to the last half of 2023. So looking here at the individual units sold, so these are the units sold from each faction. A couple things to note here. You can definitely tell that Poxus was released because we have the Poxus faction as well as the Basilia faction didn't really have a whole lot of sales before, especially the Basilia faction, but now you can see that in 2024 they increased significantly, right? Which we would recommend, or we would expect that to occur. Anytime a wave releases, we're going to see a lot of sales of those figures just because they're more available and people want them. And we're going to see a lot more sales of those figures there. Okay. The other thing to note here is Legions of Light as a new faction occurring in late 2023 and Q1 2024. This is just one figure. This is the Valiant Knight. Okay, so you can see that there's a lot of demand for the Valiant Knight. Not surprising, right? If you're following the Cabal and other groups, you know that the Valiant Knight is very, very highly demanded. But as we know from people like Bill from Dorklair, the Templars that are going to be released in the Necronominous wave and the All-Stars 6 wave are basically the same figure or have a lot of the same attributes, right? So definitely doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you really need to have a Valiant Knight right now to buy the Valiant Knight for an exorbitant price compared to waiting a couple months until the first figures from the Necronominous wave are released, and you can get I believe it's Enoch, which is their Sir Enoch, which is the first one that's going to be released. Okay, looking at some of these others, it's actually kind of surprising how stable some of them are, right? So look at Congregation of Necronominous, for example, here. Basically the same number of figures sold in Q3, Q4, and Q1 2024. You couldn't, you almost couldn't make data that's that stable there. You can see Laodicius, similarly stable. House of the Noble Bear, similarly stable. Elithi's Brood, a little bit increased compared to Q3 2023. Arethyr, holding strong, all right, falling a little bit, but still the highest faction as far as sales are concerned. Aetheron, again, very stable as well, right? Look at that. Sons of the Red Star, again, very stable. And Zylonis Flock, again, pretty stable too, right? So overall, we see a lot of stability here, other than those factions that were involved heavily with the recent release. Okay? Looking at the faction sales by month, you can see again this pattern, basically the same pattern, but broken down into month by month sales. Again, looking at Poxus and Basilia, you can see that we have that big spike in February, falling off a little bit in March, but still February and March very high in comparison to where it was before. Okay? Very few sales for both of these factions up until January, and then into February when the Poxus wave was released, it definitely increased significantly. You can see Arethyr still holding tight here. All right, Arethyr there, holding tight. Another one that's kind of interesting is Zylonis Flock, right, where we have a really big spike in March for some reason. I don't know, maybe people are thinking about spring and wanting to get figures that relate to nature that way. I don't know, but regardless, a lot of Zylonis Flock there, but everybody else is reasonably stable throughout. Looking at sales by day, it's kind of interesting here just to see there's, of course, a lot of variability with what happens day by day. I still don't know what happened here on September 20th, why we had 98 sales, which blew every other day in the history that I've been collecting out of the water. But regardless, you can generally see that, before January 1st, or at least before even February 1st, you can see kind of an average somewhere around, 10 to 30 sales per day, some spikes here or there maybe when things were released, but generally, on kind of an average day between 10 and 30 units are sold, maybe 15 to 30. It looks like, though, from February, middle of February on, when the Poxus wave was more available, that number of sales has increased there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out overall moving forward, to see if we have more of a higher baseline here from about kind of the low 20s up until the low 40s per day on average. So we'll see. I mean, in general, you would kind of expect this to happen as the line gets more popular, as more figures are produced. There's probably going to be more sold on the secondary market overall. So something to keep in mind. But in general, it seems like we may be on the verge of a higher sort of baseline number of sales on an average day. And then finally, the last graph we'll look at here is the average selling price for figures in each faction. If you notice, the axis goes very high here, and the reason why is because of our friend Unken, who actually sold, a confirmed listing. This was also in the Nerdzoic video, if you watched that a few weeks ago as well. An Unken sold for $1,515, and that was, that's the average price because only one sold in Q1. By the way, this is only the Q1 data, so I didn't want to look at everything. I wanted to see just what's happening now with the most current prices, average prices for these figures. What is it? So, so I'm going to get rid of that, because it'll enable the graph to be easier to see. And you can see the axis still goes pretty high, and the other guy here that's making the axis go very high is Sir Valgard. So we had a couple Hive Sir Valgard sales of in the $700 to $800 range. So I'm going to get rid of him too in this graph just to make it a little bit easier to read overall. Okay, so we'll go back here. And Leodicius, not surprising, we have Otho at the top, Deltagar, Balius still pretty high. Again, if you're interested in a Balius, remember that the Deacon horse that's coming out in All-Star 6 is basically just the Balius if you take off all of his clothes, which sounds weird to say, but you know what I mean. It's a Balius underneath. Going down here, you can see that the Gold Knight 2 still pretty high from reinforcements 2. Some of these other figures are pretty high as well. Magnus isn't as high as some of the others. Kauros is a little surprising that it's that he's so high overall. But we have some of the Legion builders at the bottom. But the other thing, too, to notice is that Vitus, or Vitus, whatever you want to call him, he was selling in the previous quarters for, around retail price of about, $45 to $50. Now he's starting to creep up there. So we're going to see that as we dig a little deeper into the All-Stars 4 wave to see a little bit of what's going on there, because I think he's becoming a little more scarce. Okay? Here's the Poxus faction. You can see that a lot of the newer figures are available at their retail price or very close to their retail price. The 2-pack, not surprisingly, the highest here as well. But everybody else is selling for basically around their retail price for the ones that were most recently released, with Azar sort of bringing up the rear, so to speak. Necronominus, Gold Skeleton still the highest. Morgulith, Brother Mandibulus, those are the highest there. You can see down at the bottom here, Okiedos still not getting much love on the secondary market. You can pick him up pretty cheap. Tibius as well. Ilgar, some of these most recent All-Stars releases, not very high. Skeleton Legion Builder, though, $42 or so on average, which is creeping up as well. Basilia, same sort of story here. The older figures are higher, but the newer figures that were just released here are basically selling for right around their retail price. Okay. House of the Noble Bear, we have Adamon, Rhaegor, Thord Ironjaw, the big three. Not surprising, they're the highest. Down at the bottom, you can see that we have, pretty much everybody in House of the Noble Bear is selling for around 100 or more, other than these 4 at the bottom here, right? So Darina creeping up a little bit. Romulus still pretty low. Barbarian Legion Builder, again, creeping up as well, $42 or so on average. And the Half Giant Legion Builder at $67.30. Okay. Alithia's Brood, we have the 2-pack as highest. We're going to see Alithia when we look more closely there. She has started to skyrocket a little bit. You can get her in 2023 for probably around $80 or so, $85, but definitely creeped up over the years, or over the past quarter, I should say. Legion's Con release of Vorgus Familius 2 is 105.7 on average. The regular edition, not many sales because it just came out in the in-stock sale, selling for just under $80 there. You can see at the bottom here, even some of the older figures who have been released in All-Stars, like Baron Voligar, $59 still pretty high. Even Varg is increasing, Valak is increasing. So a lot of these figures are definitely increasing as well, getting more scarce, I think, on the market. So definitely, when that happens, prices go up. Arethyr, again, the 2-pack is the highest. You can see some of the older figures here. Surprising to see Gorthok sell for this much because he's coming out in All-Star 6. So that's definitely going to be coming down in the future. But as you go, a lot of old Arethyr figures selling for in the $100 to $150 range or so. Aethon is still really high. Right? Aethon himself selling on average for $175, which is much higher than he used to sell for. He used to sell for around about $120 or so. And then if you go down, you can see some of the other older figures that are still pretty desirable. Belphegor, definitely increasing in price. He's selling for more than Archimedes right now, which is kind of surprising. This is also surprising for me to see. It kind of happens over and over again. You have the Deluxe Female Orc Builder and the Deluxe Female Orc Builder Forge Founder with the extra head actually selling for less. And the same thing happens with the male, right? Here's the Male Orc Builder selling for $99 or so, and the one with the extra head selling for $79. I think because there's just so many of the ones with the extra head that they're selling more, but I don't know why people would buy the one with the without the extra head for more money than the one with the extra head. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But anyway, You can see down here, Gorgo 2 selling loose for $69, not the 2-pack. And then, Cavern Dwarf prices definitely dropped when you saw the Cavern Dwarf 2 come out. And then the cheapest in the wave, or the faction, I should say, is Swig and the Deluxe Goblin Legion Builder, Lady Averona as well, right? All selling for, well, Swig and Lady Averona selling for under retail. Goblin Legion Builder actually going pretty high for these Deluxe Legion Builders, selling for right around retail price. Legions of Light, as we said, Valiant Knight selling for about $90 on average. Wouldn't recommend paying that if you can wait. And then Order of Aetherion, we have Sir Galaron. Once we got rid of Sir Valgard, Sir Galaron's the highest with $350. And then at the bottom here, basically all these knights are higher than retail, significantly higher than retail, not except for even Sir Owain is selling for around $60. Sir Ignatius dropped significantly, right, with the All-Star 6 release coming out. I don't know why Gorthok didn't, but regardless, that's the sales. Not a lot of sales for Gorthok at all, or Ignatius, by the way. Right? Those figures were pretty rare to begin with, so definitely not surprising to see Ignatius's price drop. Sons of the Red Star, we have Keltus and Pixis being the highest. Scapular still, selling for a lot, even though we know that the Scapular 2 is coming out with the Rising Suns wave. And then we have the Deluxe Dark Templar, probably the highest. We'll look at it in the wave, but I think this is the highest average price for a Deluxe Legion Builder of $45.60. Mephitor still not getting much love, $41.50 as well. But I can see the difference between Sir Gerard, the Legion's conversion versus the regular version, premium of about $13 there. And then finally, Xylona's Flock. The highest is Xylona herself, Asterion, Faunus, Myria Golden Branch, probably a little surprising there, but you don't see her come up very often. Thalen Frostbow, she sells more often, but pretty high price as well. Then if you go toward the bottom here, you can see that in this case, the elves, people do want the extra head, right? So they're paying a little bit more for the extra head in that case. The original Artemis Silvercord selling for $93, the deluxe version, and then Artemis Silvercord 2 selling for $87, right? So she's really crept up as well. You can see some of these at the bottom here. Lee just released for $49, selling just at that retail price because he's available pretty much everywhere. Silverhorn Sentries dropped significantly because he's now available in the Reinforcements 2 wave. And then the bottom we have Bryophytus and Xenothon. Bryophytus actually has sold. This is up compared to what it was in 2023, so that's kind of interesting to see. But anyway, keep an eye on those moving forward. A little surprising that you can still get this Xylurnian Guard for less than retail on average at $47. I think a lot of people really like that figure, so it's a little surprising. I think maybe a lot of them were made, so a little surprising that you can still get them for under retail. That is it for our introduction and overview of the Q1 2024 sales for Mythic Legions. Stay tuned for more videos coming in the next couple weeks where we're going to look at and dig into the sales of individual waves in a lot more detail. So stay tuned. I hope you'll be around more. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.